Welcome to today's episode, Rockstars. Our guest is Stacey Steinmiller, a psychotherapist who had a private practice for years, specializing in helping people overcome trauma. She now is a business coach for radicallifecoaching.com, and she has been an expert at helping healthcare entrepreneurs overcome their mental blocks to help them achieve what they're looking for out of life. She is going to do live coaching on me, guys, during today's episode. I'm going to share vulnerably some past trauma, and she's going to show you through my modeling how she's helping people overcome these barriers to achieve what they want out of life. This is one of the most important types of coaching I experience, so I want you to pay close attention to her description of the different types of blocks and traumas that we have that limit us as entrepreneurs. So if you've ever felt stuck, this is your episode. This is something that is going to be transformative. So guys, enjoy the show.
I love physical therapy and I love personal training, actually. I didn't share that with you. So I've worked with personal trainers and so forth. So I really like that intersection of healing from injury with physical therapists and then continuing on with some sort of strength training, right, to help prevent injury.
You have experience with PT? You sound
Just
like you really
bit.
understand it. Yeah.
Yeah. Here I am, like pretending I'm a PT expert.
No, I love how you connected that because I was like, that was an expert observation. So I just wondered maybe you were a patient. Sometimes people who speak into it like that have had therapy.
I've been to PT before, so I used to be a runner. I wonder what you guys say about us. You don't have to tell me.
We love runners. Are you kidding? No, we love athletic populations. What's really hard for us, Stacey, is the opposite, where we have sedentary people who are just like, it's either rusting or wearing out, right? So like runners wear out because they're just super, that's awesome. So you're a runner.
Yeah, so I was trail runner. I went up to running a 50K. But prior to doing that, I kept injuring myself. I IT band issues, which was my glutes were not strong enough. My hips were not strong enough, right? So I was trying to run too fast and too far for what my body was capable of doing. So I had found myself in physical therapy a couple of times. And so I finally really learned, like, Stacey, you need to do more strength training. Like, you need to make that a priority because this is not serving you. So yeah, I've learned the hard way. And then I see other people doing it. And when I had worked at clinic mental health, it was probably similar population, like the more sedentary and people that had like maybe disabilities and so forth. And so I've just always been into health in general, not just mental health, but physical health and so forth. So yeah, I recommend people to go to PT all the time. Whenever somebody's like, "Oh, this hurts," I'm like, do you get a referral for PT?"
Well, we
and then I'm like, then don't stop. Then do some personal training after, and then you won't have this problem ever again.
Well, it's so cool that you get that connection as a previous patient, that like there's a mental aspect of physical therapy. And as someone who had a psychotherapy practice, you see the parallels in a way that I don't. I have been through various counselors and I've done therapy in various forms, but you had your own practice, a cash pay business. So you understand the outpatient healthcare world and even that connection between physical therapy and the type of therapy that you used to do as a clinician. So yeah, I appreciate the fact that you love our industry so much. That's great.
I do.
Yeah. So now, obviously, you've evolved and you no longer run that practice. And now you're coaching entrepreneurs in various forms. Healthcare is where you were born and planted. So I would love to hear a little bit about common mindset blocks. As someone who's been a psychotherapist who's worked with people on the entrepreneurial levels, are there common mental blocks that entrepreneurs have that maybe other people don't? Or does it not matter?
I think that's actually a good question, like discerning, like, is this just entrepreneurs or is it other people too? And that's good because my gut says that everybody has this, but becoming an entrepreneur is like shining a spotlight on the problem, right? Whereas if you're not an entrepreneur, you probably have these limitations, but there's nothing making it known, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so,
I totally get that. What I always tell my team is that when our company is starting to go sideways, it always will amplify our weakness. And so maybe
Yes.
that's a similar concept.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we grow and kind of like, getting to that higher level, it's going to be all our weaknesses are like, oh crap, like, I didn't know that was here. I guess that was my experience anyway. Like, oh, I thought I like really had this down. I guess I don't.
Or we didn't even know what we needed to have down. Like for me, that was my big thing was like, crap, I didn't know I was supposed to, when I started becoming an entrepreneur, I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
I know. My philosophy is if we did know what we were getting into, we wouldn't have done it. Yeah. So, but one mindset thing I will highlight that I always highlight is the scarcity mindset, the not enough, so if it's not enough clients, it's not enough time and not enough money, like this whole idea that we live in this scarce world instead of more abundance and opportunity. And what happens is when we live in a mindset of scarcity, there's an effect on the body. This is an interesting conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're in more of this fight or flight mode. So your muscles are tensing more, right? Like it's affecting your digestion, your muscles. And then you're kind of walking around, in this like low level anxious state all the time. And that I think is probably the biggest issue that entrepreneurs get stuck up on.
Well, I feel like you're talking to me directly. I honestly, so today's episode, I think, is more for me than anyone else. I'm glad anyone else who's listening will get something out of this. But it's so true because what's hard too is that it's not like it goes away when you get successful. I've grown and sold numerous companies. I'm growing various ones now, but I find myself focusing on what I don't have.
Yes.
And I do think there's kind of like this low level anxiousness that I'll tend to carry if I'm not careful. And I was just recently reminded with one of my coaches, I always have a coach.
Nice.
It was yesterday. She said, don't forget that one of the greatest regrets at the end of our lives is this thing about how many people say they just wish they had let themselves be happier along the way.
Yes.
So you see that so the scarcity mindset isn't unique to entrepreneurs, but it is something that gets amplified, is what you're saying, when you see people starting companies and running them?
Yeah, exactly. Because when you're working a 9 to 5 or whatever the hours is, if you're a W-2 employee, right, you have a steady paycheck, right? And so that gives you this sense of security, right? Of like, your paycheck's coming. Like, yes, people might develop fears about losing their job and things like that. But for the most part, you have this ongoing, well, if I show up to work and I do a good enough job, I get my paycheck, and that creates a sense of safety and security. And in order for our bodies to relax, they must feel safe. So this is kind of me bringing my trauma specialty. I don't know if I mentioned that. So in my therapy practice, I specialized in trauma, complex PTSD, and so forth. So we need that safety to relax. And then when you become an entrepreneur, you don't get those paychecks, right? You have to create the paychecks. Paychecks are, almost never the same, right? So you lose, all that bottoms out. And I didn't realize, for me, and I think a lot of people, how much we really relied on that safety component of the paycheck until it's not there. And then the clients, I gotta find the clients. And then you get the clients, and are they gonna keep, I remember having these things like, what if all my clients one day this is so funny. One day called and all stopped coming to therapy at the same time.
The what ifs. My favorite was, because I literally lived in fear of this, was what if I walked in and like those 3 people that are like the house of cards of my team quit? And like, what am I going to do? Because I was already running so thin and like running energy-wise next to nothing. So yeah, it's interesting to hear you describe it so simply. And I don't think anyone's listening. Rockstars, I'm sure you're listening to this going, yeah, that makes sense. But isn't it fascinating just to see how that simple process breaks down to the physiological level? Because that's a big thing in the PT space. Most PTs are into this because they're fascinated by the human body, but we love it because of the emotional impact we make on our patients. So it's kind of funny how you're just on the opposite side of the same coin, which is that in your therapy practice, you're helping people psychologically, but also observing their physiological improvements probably as a result of their gains.
Yes, definitely. And yeah, there's one thing I want to say on that, because, yeah, so I worked with a personal trainer for about 2.5, 3 years, somewhat recently. And I didn't, I don't think I knew I had back muscles
Right.
until, like, I was like, what are these things? Like, I just, behind me. I never had that experience before, which was obviously great for my posture and things like that. But there was this confidence component that came with developing back muscles. I felt more in my body, right? Instead of, I don't know, somewhere in the clouds, because I felt more grounded, being stronger. I felt these muscles in my back, pulling my chest was out. I felt more confident. And so yeah, I love that intersection between the mental health component and the physical health component and how they work together like that. But I use that example a lot because I don't know, I find it funny.
Yeah, it's true. And I honestly, even in the physical therapist world, like we're really good at what we do and horrible patients. So when we do go through those experiences, we have a very similar experience. So I am fascinated, Stacey, by this way that you help entrepreneurs, because coaching is such a generalized term. And as you help entrepreneurs, especially in the healthcare space, I imagine that the scarcity mindset shows up for them in a couple of ways. You illustrated like fear of not having enough patience or whatever. What other mental blocks do you find get in the way of entrepreneurs when they're trying to grow their practice?
Yeah. Well, my first thought was the money component, like the relationship with, I feel like we have to talk about that too. Although I feel like it does relate to scarcity, but it's kind of like a specific, focus within the scarcity, which I think I mentioned when we were chatting earlier. I remember working with coaches and they're like, you need to raise your, you need to raise your rates. Well, and this also relates to burnout too, right?
Yeah, totally.
So it's like, so it's almost like this working backwards thing that I really like is how much money do I need to make in a year? Right?
Right.
To not to survive.
But to
Here we go.
thrive.
So when people are like, well, I can survive off 30 grand a year or so, right? Like they do this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Instead of like, what number would allow my muscles to relax,
Oh my
right?
gosh, rock stars. I'm interrupting because that is so big. What is the money that you need to make just to make your muscles relax? What's that financial number that's going to throw your parasympathetic into gear so you can just chill out?
Yes.
And yes, I'm talking to myself as I'm talking to my audience. So keep going. Sorry, this was gold.
No, I love that. No, because that's huge to highlight. Yeah. So then it's first, so I'm sure a number comes to your mind, and then you're going to have this like internal script that's like, what is that? Like that's so big, right?
Right.
So it's like allowing that number to come out, saying it, writing down, it's like you got to like train your nervous system to get used to it and then work backwards from there. So, if I saw X amount of clients a week at this amount of money, to kind of like, and also put in at least 6 weeks vacation, right? So, take that 52 and minus 6 from that, so that you work in your self-care into your schedule. So maybe I'm kind of transitioning into the mindset of entrepreneurs that's like, go, go, go. I gotta like work. There are no breaks, right? That like hustle and grind culture and like stepping away from that because it's just not sustainable. And, it puts you at risk of, losing your practice, of losing those the staff members that you were talking about, like, well, man, what if these 3, key people left? It's like, well, they're going to be more likely to leave if you are stressed out all the time and then you're more frustrated and you're yelling and you're
you don't see, you're so stressed, you don't see the forest from the trees and you're missing opportunities that would be fun, that would create connection and cultural experiences for them to stay. I love that.
So, and I think that kind of goes like, all right, so I think it does kind of start with the money component in a way of setting myself up to make enough for me to feel supported so that I can show up in a way that I'm doing the self-care to prevent the burnout, then I can really step into the leader that I desire to be, right? Because I see leadership as an energy more than anything.
You see leadership as an energy. My gosh. Okay. I don't do this with every guest. I'm like literally just processing that. So what does that mean to you? I have my own thoughts on that, but like when you say leadership is an energy, how does that look when it's an effective leader?
Yeah. So for me, that looks like I envision someone that, well, they have good posture, I guess back to the physical. So they have this like strong presence, but calm presence. So it's someone that I can respect, right? So if I see them as strong, I respect them. And which is really important for me because I can be a little judgmental
I
around
think everyone
people.
is. As a matter of fact, it's so funny because we all do this regardless, in my opinion, that the second we see someone new, we may not even be conscious to it, but we just assess threats if we're in a scarcity mindset or opportunity if we're in a growth mindset.
Yes, I love that. So then when somebody kind of has a strong demeanor, we can respect them, but calm is also strength too, because leaders that are like running around like a chicken with their head cut off,
Oh,
right? Like, right? I don't respect them because clearly I'm like, well, you're clearly not managing your time well. You're not, right? Like there's this
yeah.
immediate. So how am I going to come to you and ask you a question if I'm unsure of something or if I'm struggling, right? Like I no longer feel safe, on an emotional level, right? Not that I'm going to get like hit or, I'm not saying like safe in that way, but I don't feel emotionally safe to come ask you a question because I'm probably just going to get this stressed out response or I'm going to feel dismissed and unimportant, right? It's not going to hit me well. So that's where like the calm but yet strong demeanor is so important. What it does is it invites people to come to you, right? Then they're like, hey, well, I'm working with this client and this is what's going on and we feel stuck here. Like, what are your suggestions? And then you're available to be that supportive mentor for them, and then they grow, and then their clients benefit, and then your business benefits, right? Because now you're bringing in good business, right? So it's really important to step into that mentor coach role as a leader more so, I think, than like kind of focusing on all the
A manager
business
of
and
duties
yes,
and tasks,
exactly.
a leader versus a manager. And it's so cool
Yes.
because in the PT space, I know everyone listening has a really good grip on understanding this concept of what their patient experience should look like because they know when they win. Their patients leave the clinic and say, wow, I had more mental therapy done today than physical therapy because we understand that body-mind connection, but it's also about creating that space for people to feel safe, to suffer because they come to our clinics to suffer. Well, life is suffering. So when we as leaders create what you're describing, I see that doing the same thing where we're intentionally creating an environment where people feel seen and heard and loved. And a calm leader, the way you're describing it, what's funny is I'm very hyperactive. So I actually don't feel like that's I feel like it's still congruent in my own way because when I am high energy but it's positive and fun, it's not running around with my head cut off. It's very much like funny and like connecting. And then when someone brings something to me in that space, you have the ability, regardless of your natural leadership style, to just be with people in a way to where they feel safe, feel heard, and talk about retention. We try to solve these problems with more doing this. Let's create, compensation plans and leadership programs and all these things. And those are important, but the calm leader is quietly connecting one-on-one and slowing time down to understand what's the most important thing in the world, which is the person right in front of them, right? And then helping them grow. So I'm amazed I feel like we could come back and do a whole different episode, Stacey, on just how people relate to money.
Yeah, I know that's a huge one. Yeah,
Because as
totally.
you were saying that, I felt sick to my stomach, which I've learned through my own therapy means that there's an emotional relationship to what you just said. I'm like, oh yeah, like there's something about that there. But okay, so scarcity mindset, it shows up initially like money for a lot of people. Is there any other or what other roadblocks or key roadblocks do you see with entrepreneurs as you're working with them?
Yeah. So the money scarcity, then like we said, then we go into this burnout. I
Oh,
kind of
burnout. So yeah, you
grind.
did started
Yeah.
pivoting into that. So the burnout mindset's one that is a resulting factor. Got it.
Right. And then I think another big one is like the authenticity piece, like how to be authentically yourself.
Jeez, man. It's like you're speaking to my soul.
I'm just like reading your mind right
Yeah,
now.
seriously. I feel like everyone else is listening to me get a free session. Yeah, I feel like I personally, like I'm responding like I'm your patient. I personally feel, but I do feel like over years, that's something that's gotten better with age for me. The older I get, the easier it is for me to be authentic. But dude, I think back to my younger days when you said that, I just felt sick again because it was like me trying to be everything to everyone looked like a lot of different masks. It's part of that running around with your head cut off too.
Do you want me? I mean, this is totally up to you and
Yeah.
how vulnerable you want to be on,
Let's go.
on
Audience,
your podcast.
I love you guys.
Do you want me to
trust
like
you.
dig into that a little bit?
100%.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this like younger version of you, right? When you kind of started out. So how old is that kind of brought that like sick to your stomach feeling up? Like how old is
8 to
that
10.
Will?
I had an exact, like as soon as you said that, I was like 8 to 10.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, so I want you to picture him. Well, it sounds like you already got the picture of him.
Totally.
And what does that 8 to 10-year-old Will need to know in order for his muscles to relax?
He needed to know that he was on people's radar. I needed to know. I'm a third born out of 4, and I have much older siblings. So when I was like hitting that 8 to 10 year mark, they were in those teenage years, my older siblings. And I know now as a parent of 4 boys myself, what my parents kind of were going through, because that's an incredibly difficult time. When your first kids become teenagers, they're pulling away, they're challenging authority. But the resulting factor was like, hey guys, I'm over here, trying to get attention and be relative. So things that I was concerned about were often, not intentionally and not negative. I have amazing parents, but just dismissed. It was very much just like, yeah, whatever, just get in the corner, get out of my hair kind of thing. And so that 8 to 10-year-old really wanted to just know that he mattered, that people could see him.
Yeah. And does that 8 to 10-year-old, does he know about all your practices and your businesses now? Like, does he know that you accomplished all this?
No.
All right. So there's the work. I won't push you further than that.
Sure.
But so this is kind of where I can bring in some of that therapy stuff in the coaching, is because what I find is when we kind of leave parts of ourselves in the past, right? And don't get that knowledge, not just in our head. I mean, obviously you're like in your head, you're like, yes, I know I'm a successful business owner of these physical therapy practices, et cetera. But that gut, like, does your gut know, which is that part of yourself, that like 8 to 10, your old self, and kind of bringing those components into your life now. Because once that younger you knows, oh, I'm safe now, I'm seen now, I do have the money coming in, my family's okay, all of this, then that's when things really start to shift. Like you said earlier, this thing of like, yeah, it doesn't matter how much money I make or how successful I am. There's always that like fear running in the background. Well, that's because not all of you is in 2024,
You know what, Stacey? So this is brilliant. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. I drove into work today, and I didn't know we were going to go this route, obviously, in the conversation, but I literally thought to myself, I wonder what the younger version of me would think about how I'm living my life right now. And that was because I got coached yesterday. And the big thing for me right now was to introduce fun more into my life. And so that's why it was on top of mind. It was coming in going, I was thinking more like early high school, but like, what would that guy think of me right now? And it was pretty judgmental, if I'm being honest. Just, I'm going to be 100% authentic since we're on that topic. But I was disappointed. I was like,
Mm.
I wish he would have more fun.
Mm.
It's so funny as you're talking about this, all this resonates because a little bit of what drives me is even doing the show is because I'm trying to put myself on a radar, right? And then the money piece ties into the fact that my parents struggled financially greatly during those years. Really was a hot topic. So couldn't afford things, would remind me of that very lovingly. And they were just, I thought they handled things perfectly in that regard, but I was still aware of their suffering. And so there's this relationship with money where I'm just like, I there's a certain amount that like I'm, to be really direct with you, I have a vision of a very large impact. And it's not all negative, by the way. I think there's a lot of positive things around it. But yeah, I can see where the lack of fun comes in to play around this thing called wanting to be on radar, more important to be validated / wanting to have money so that we don't suffer. And yeah, I really appreciate you kind of taking me back to that kid because it seems like I need to spend a little bit of time catching him up on what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Where it's safe to be fun. Like, this isn't your, problem to deal with. Like, we are okay. We are safe. And I like how you brought up, like, your parents handled it really well. But when you're an empathetic person, when you're an intuitive person, you know, I think therapists make the mistake of like, oh, well, if you have this issue, it means you experience this, big trauma, right? Or something
Yeah.
like that. And that could be confusing when you're like, wait, no, my parents did handle this really well. And I'm a parent now. And honestly, I can't think of another way to handle
Right.
it better, right?
Totally.
And then it can feel real spiraling sometimes, at least for me. I'm like, wait a minute. But I think that's just part of having a big heart is you pick up on those things and you take on that responsibility, unconsciously, right? So it doesn't mean that you've had to have this huge traumatic childhood in order to struggle with these things. It means like you felt their stress, they didn't want to be struggling financially with 4 children. Like
Right.
you're the third or fourth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you have 4. So I was like, wait a minute, did I say that right?
Yeah, very paralleled.
Yeah.
Very paralleled. Yeah, but the thing that you said that, Stacey, that brought tears to my eyes was in it because I felt it emotionally all the way to where it just felt like on nerve for me was it's safe to have fun. Like,
Yes.
wow. Like even saying that, I just, that's something I'm going to meditate on later because, there's something about safety around that I'm going to explore. Very interesting how these little things drive us, and they're below the surface, right? Like it's not like I'm top of mind thinking of this. I'm thinking of real time problems, and that's part of the problem I have that many of the rock stars listening has, I believe, is that we're so busy in motion around the things that we've built, and there's so much positive feedback. When I treated, it was the cookies from the patients, right? That was the thing, but it was also the thing that held me in place from developing because I had to let go of patient care to become a team leader.
Yes.
Right. And then there's things that we have to let go. It reminds me of a ropes course where I've got this thing that holds me safe. But if I want to move forward, I've got to grab the next thing and let go at some point of the thing that I'm holding on to. Otherwise, I just keep stretching myself too thin, too far apart.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's like this, and the word worthiness, right, I think is there, right? Especially, did you use the word cookies?
Cookies?
Cookie. Well, like you said that you get your cookies from. Wait, is that the word you used? Or did you say something else?
Oh, I don't remember. I don't know. Oh, yeah, cookies. I did say cookies. Like when I was a physical therapist. Sorry, I was thinking about the ropes thing, but no, the patients who used to bring me cookies.
Oh, the actual cookies. Oh.
not a metaphorical cookie. Like patients.
I thought it was a metaphorical cookie.
Everything else, yeah, no worries. I get it.
But no. Well, because I use the word good. I use a metaphorical goodies, right? These, right? Like your patients give you, right, this like goody worthiness. Like I did good. I'm good. I did a good job. Right.
Right.
And when we feel dependent, like part of your identity. And so, to like swing to the other rope, you have to let go, and you're going to have this you're not going to get all that validation, and you're going to be doing something new of like, well, I'm hiring this staff and I've got to manage them and develop them. And right, I'm not as good at that because that's new. I know how to help this shoulder injury, but I don't know, right?
I
Like
don't know how to
manage
recruit.
this
I don't
staff.
know how to handle these crucial conversations when people are unhappy with their pay. It feels very unrewarding, but once you master that, there are different goodies. It's funny because in my world, I always use just the cookie analogy. It wasn't an analogy, it's just a literal description of what held me back. And now I'm realizing there are various forms of goodies. Cookies to begin with as a PT. And then as an owner, it was funny because the thing that held me back then, once I finally figured out how to build the team, was adoration from my team. I went from being despised by my team and honestly, mostly because I wasn't a great leader, but the other half was because I wasn't hiring the right people. And then when I finally hired the right people, it was an exaggerated form of praise. And then I sold the company because I was ready to start more B2B and it just evolved. The only thing I can tell you I've learned, Stacey, that I want my rock stars to listen to is that the goodies are limiting. Like there's something that's good about them, of course, but what I've come to learn at the end is that if I don't create internal validation without needing cookies or goodies, then that's what's been strengthened over those cycles. Cause it used to be actual cookies, then it was, physical praise. And then, sometimes it's money. And then at the end of the day, it's like, no, the reason I think I've been able to keep progressing is because over time, that 8-year-old is starting to see more of himself in not need mom and dad and the sisters and brothers to see him. And that's me kind of realizing that. And so I just think when we can generate that internally, that's when maybe we calm down a little. I know it definitely helps me calm down overall.
Yep, totally. Yeah, because we get this inherent worth, right? And it's no longer dependent on the externals. And then you can really play and have fun, because when you truly play, it's not about the outcomes. It's about being in the process.
Wow.
And then you turn business into the play and you're just on a playground having fun.
What would that look like, Stacey, if we looked at our businesses like a playground?
Yeah.
And it wasn't like life or death or survival or failure. Like, man.
All that weight just...
Yeah. What would that feel like to go to work every day and just be like, what do I want to do? And how do I want to help people? And there's elements I think that you have to they're just part of the game that aren't fun, but that's just like anything else. No one probably likes to get hit playing football. Right? Like no one wants to get hit hard by a baseball that's badly pitched or all those risks of injury that exist, but it's still a game, right?
Yep.
And when we can play it and have fun, we don't even worry about those things because we're not about outcomes or what ifs.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so that fear just kind of evaporates from our system and we can be more present and enjoy life and have more fun.
Well, clearly, I think this is an incredible demonstration. We talked a little bit about what you see, and then you used me as a material, right, to help kind of demonstrate what you do. And I can't thank you enough. That was transformative, and I don't use that word lightly. And the next question might be a little bit more useful for people who are listening, going, how do I get that? So, in the case where you are working with people, what are the different ways that you serve your entrepreneurs to help identify and eliminate these mental blocks?
Yeah. So I work with them one-on-one, which would have basically looked like part of our discussion without other people listening.
Right.
So we could just do one-on-one sessions, and I have packages and all that fun stuff. And then I also do this online group. We meet every Thursday at noon Eastern time, and I do group coaching. So it's small group, but I think because it's small and everybody in there's great, we can get just as deep.
Yeah, that was my question. How does that look in a group sense compared to one-on-one? So they have to build safety with each other.
Yeah, they have that built-in safety, and which is, which might feel a little weird. I know like a new person, like, oh, I don't know, they all know each other. But because it is so safe, and I usually don't get like an influx of a lot of people at a time, as when a new person does join, everybody's so welcoming. And the fact that they're sharing, then that new person feels really safe. Like, okay, this is a space I can, open up in. So, and I find that group thing to it, you benefit either way from individual and group, but the group has that component of listening to other people's vulnerabilities, and it makes you feel less alone. And I run it on an app that kind of functions like a Facebook group, so there's ongoing support all the time. So my clients are able to like go in and post, and they can say like, oh, this thing happened and I'm spinning out, or whatever it is. Or even if it's just sharing a win, like I did this hard thing today, I put myself out there, or I made a mistake and I'm not beating myself up. It can be like big or small. So really, I see it as not just the coaching, but like creating a community around that inner growth that then supports the business growth as well.
I agree with you. Obviously, what you're doing is at a much higher level because you're talking about core mindset setting with leaders and helping them remove these barriers and blocks. And the reason, by the way, Rockstars, the reason I think that's so valuable, I've had great privilege of working with a number of coaches, as everyone knows who's listened to this. I've never not had a coach in the last 20 years. I've had therapists, all these things. And I can tell Stacey is in that top 1% of the best I've worked with, because when you can change your mindset, it's almost like the how-to and the what-to-dos just totally like take care of themselves.
Exactly. Oh my God. I'm so glad you said that. Yes, because that's another block, right? We focus on can I swear on here or no?
You can if you want. That's fine. I want you to be yourself.
I can censor myself if you want.
No,
but I'll censor myself. So I would write F the how and allow. So to not focus on the how, because that's where we get into like this rigid mindset when like, how do I do this? How do I get more clients? How do I get this staff member to behave properly? How do I motivate them to do their job? Right. And then we're really stressed out. But then by shifting that mindset, and then we start to learn to relax and allow, and the answer is just, you're literally ordering a coffee and like the answer is like, oh yeah, like it's right there.
I had that. I had this one experience with a coach years ago that was the first experience that I had living what you just talked about. And this coach, I was with this person, and like my mindset shifted, which it did today with you, by the way, Stacey. But in this case, it was my first time. And so I had this mindset shift for the next like phase of growth. I remember describing it like a hot knife through butter. Like it used to be like this coal block of rock that was frozen. The butter was like frozen hard. And I had like this really dull knife, and I was trying to cut it off because I needed it. That was work. But then like all of a sudden that block of butter had been in the microwave, and then my knife had been heated, and it was a sharp knife. And I just would barely put any effort, and it would just effortlessly cut. And that's the type of deep work that you provide in a way that is phenomenal. And I want to validate the group coaching thing as well. As someone who does group coaching to help people hire physical therapists, it's one of the group coaching programs that I have. It's a low offering for me, but it's something I love to do. We work on mindset, but we also have learned that like people, when they work with together, once they get safe, they are able to go deeper, I think, with a group. And then there's this immediate validation of, wow, we're all struggling in this together. Maybe I don't need to be so hard on myself. And, oh, I could do this. I can share this positive win and help other people. There's an altruistic nature in group coaching.
Yes.
And then they have their own wins that the therapist or the leader of the coach would never have thought of because they're not in the weeds in the same way. So I believe, like you, that group coaching can be an exponential way of bettering our people, because then we're building our network. And just so you know, the core theme of this show is that helping people build their network is the quickest way of building their net worth, emotionally and financially. It's all about who we know. So I love what you bring to the table, Stacey. My gosh. So tell me about specific programs. Like what do you have coming up for your business?
Okay, yeah. So I do have a special thing coming up in a couple of weeks, which I know will have already happened by the time people are listening.
I'm rush editing this episode and I'm going to push it out before that. I'm not kidding. I've changed my mind.
Oh my gosh, you're great.
You got me. You got this knife all hot, so I'm cutting through things really quick. So promote it.
Amazing. Okay, so the first full week of November, I'm running this like low ticket offer special, $39, and called the Visible Entrepreneur. So we're gonna hop on Zoom Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for 30 minutes. And we're gonna talk about the common mindset blocks around becoming more visible. And since I do it on the app that functions like a Facebook group, I'm going to encourage people to do uncomfortable things like post a picture or even a video with their bio or work on selling themselves, putting themselves out there. And it's going to be focused on where each person is, in their journey. So maybe you're already a pro at that and you're used to putting yourself out on social media. So maybe it's like, okay, when's the next networking group, or what is that bigger business or client that you really want to go after and you haven't reached out to them yet? So really kind of, working through those scary blocks. So I have that. That's a fun thing coming up that I'm really excited about.
When does that launch? When does that launch?
November 4th, that Monday. So it'll be that Monday through Thursday.
Okay. So November 4th. Today is October 25th as we're doing this. So I will work on editing this and get this out hopefully Tuesday. I'll see if I can do a turnaround. It may not happen, but if this, for whatever reason, doesn't launch by that time, entrepreneurs, I just want to give Stacey my praise and thanks for being here today, and encourage you, if any part of this resonated, if you're at this point listening, because you were with me in that personal journey and you personally related to this, honor what you're hearing and feeling and just reach out to her to learn more about how that works and what that would look like to get that kind of mindset setting. How do people get a hold of you, Stacey?
Yeah, I'm everywhere. So
oh, she's omnipresent.
It's easy to find me. So
she's behind you right now, listeners. Just kidding.
I really am. No. So yeah, my website, radicallifecoach.com.
Radicallifecoach.com. That's a great name. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I have a booking, like I do a free discovery call. So where I can sit down and talk about, what you want to accomplish, where you're at, what do you feel is in the way. And then I can tell you what I would do to help you get there. And then you can decide, like, is that something I want to invest in or not? And then, yeah, it could look like the one-on-one. It could look like the group. My website. I'm on social, Stacey Steinmiller on LinkedIn, on Facebook, The Radical Evolution on Instagram. So I'm easily findable. Yeah. So.
Well, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for being a part of this special episode today. And Rockstars, thank you again for tuning in. As always, I'm so grateful that I've built this relationship with you as I've been able to share some of these personal things. And I hope one of your main takeaways is just the idea of the importance of being authentic and real and sharing maybe that part of our cactus that we're embarrassed about, because I think that's the part that we relate to the most. So thanks again for tuning in, guys. Until next time. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode. As a thank you, I have a gift. In today's show notes, there's a link for you to join the Stress-Free PT newsletter. This is a comedy newsletter for anyone who works in healthcare. And of course, we're going to have comedy bits. We're going to have inspirational stories, leadership bits. It's going to be a weekly newsletter just to lighten your week, to help you do what you love with more passion. So click that link below and join that newsletter, and we'll see you in our next episode.